Hello, here we are again, another Game of Thrones episode, and wow, what a fantastic episode. Season 6, Episode 4, Book of the Stranger. The last three have had a few quiet moments, a few slow times, but this one was a powerhouse. It gave us a lot of what we've been wanting to see, and a fantastic ending, but we'll get there slowly but surely. But let's start at the beginning. I mean, wow. I mean, at the wall, gates open, and there's Sansa, Brienne, Podrick, and that hug with Jon Snow. I mean, I think everyone's been wanting something nice for the Starks forever, and we finally get it. It's just been something we've all been waiting for. And these two characters, Sansa and Jon, haven't been on screen together since the pilot episode in season 1. So a lot has happened to these two characters over the last seasons. I mean, they've been on such an adventure in their own rights. A lot of tragedy for them both. But this was a scene that we all enjoyed. But it was a good scene. I mean, it opened up a lot of possibilities now. Now Sansa and Jon are back together. They're obviously going after Winterfell, but how are they going to get it? As Tormund said, he's only got 2,000 wildlings ready for battle. Ramsay's got 5,000 trained soldiers and cavalry. So what's Jon going to do? I mean, also, well, I'm not sure where this stands in the realm of things, but Jon is still a Snow. He's Jon Snow. He's not Jon Stark. So yes, he is the eldest remaining male heir of Eddard Stark, but he's not a legitimate Stark. He hasn't been given the name. Whereas Sansa is, and she's the next eldest. So the question becomes, when she was telling him, you can go back, you should go back and reclaim Winterfell for our family's names. No, it's all down to you. You're the heir. And I'm thinking, I don't think technically he is allowed to, or whether he would be respected in that role. Whereas she will be. Everyone knows her. She holds the name. She's obviously coming into her own. I would say that, to be honest, throughout the series, I haven't been a great fan of Sansa Stark. I mean, the first 2 or 3 seasons, she was just coming over. I mean, yes, okay, a lot of crap happened to her with Joffrey. But even with that aside, she was just whiny and self-centered. And I don't know whether that comes down to just how good the actress was. But I just couldn't bond with her. But to be honest, Sophie Turner, the girl who plays it, really sold me this episode. She really came into her own. Strong Sansa. Obviously, she knew where she wanted to go. She knew how she had to get there. She's the power now, perhaps, behind this thrust to regain Winterfell, as Jon doesn't seem to have it in him much anymore. He's gone through a lot. He's died. He's been betrayed. He's come back. Every time he tries to do something good, it gets thrown in his face. And as the guy said, he's just tired of fighting. He just wants to go somewhere and leave it all behind. And he realizes by the time that letter arrives from Ramsay, telling him all the crap that he's going to do, that he can't back out on this. He has to back Sansa. But here's a thought, and what a powerhouse this would be. Sansa Stark becomes the heir to House Stark. Jon Snow is a commander for her armies. So Davos Seaworth will be their advisor, and Melisandre, if she survives Brienne of Tarth, and Davos' revenge, could become the magical element in that. I mean, wow, what a powerhouse they would make altogether. And if they could rally the North, if the North truly does remember, and they send out ravens to all the other northern houses saying, we are back, we are marching on Winterfell, those still loyal to the Starks rally to our banners. Ramsay Bolton is in a lot of crap. He really is, and I don't know how he's going to get out of it. But also, we see perhaps at the wall a spark of interest between Tormund and Brienne, although Brienne looked more nervous and not sure how to deal with Tormund's obvious regard for her, the way he was staring at her over the dinner table. So that was fun. That was fun. I think she needs a man in her life, and Tormund's certainly man enough to deal with her. So that was good, but a fantastic scene, and as I say, leaving lots of opportunities open now. How they're going to go back and save Winterfell? How they're going to take Winterfell from Ramsay? He's got Rickon in the dungeons. Okay, Rickon was delivered by Small John Umber. Now, the Umbers used to be one of the most loyal houses to the Starks, one of their most loyal bannermen. Now, has he turned? Is he a Ramsay man now? You know, a Bolton man? Or is he pulling some sort of fast one on him? Have him and Rickon sort of like got this plan going, get inside the walls, kill Ramsay? I'm undecided. I don't think it's going to go that way. I think Small John Umber, after his father's death, has decided, I'm going to support the Boltons because they're the power in the north. Now, whether that means he'll stay with the Boltons when Jon Snow and Sansa Stark come down, I don't know. He might sway back and put his men behind the Starks again. But if he stays with the Boltons, that means Ramsay's got the Karstarks and the Umbers, two of the biggest northern houses, with all of their men behind his own 5,000 men. That's going to be one hell of a fight. But they've got to keep Rickon safe. So do Jon and Sansa send in a small commando team, get over the walls of Winterfell, find Rickon, keep him safe while the fight's going on outside? They perhaps try and sneak him out, move him to another safe place in Winterfell. I mean, let's face it, the people who know Winterfell the best are Rickon, Jon, and Sansa. If they could find anywhere inside Winterfell to keep Rickon safe while the battle's going on, I'm sure they could probably think of something. And then once the Starks beat the Ramsays, which I hope they will do, because the Boltons, because Ramsay really needs his comeuppance, then they can come out and have a great big family reunion. But we're going to have to wait and see on that, possibly another couple of episodes at least. But then we go to the Vale. Peter Baelish has returned. Looking a little bit greyer around the edges of Phil. He's probably under a lot of stress. But he's still playing his games. And he's still got, obviously, Robin Arryn is still on side with him. So that's good for him. It gives him control of the Vale of Arryn and all the knights in the Vale. And in the books, at least, the Arryns have one of the biggest, strongest, most well-respected armies in Westeros. And if that is now in the control of Peter Baelish, now Baelish has always been the power behind the throne. You know, he's playing the long con. He's got his fingers in all the pies, and he knows what's going on. Would he need an army to get where he is? I suppose at some point he would. But last season, he was promised the title of Warden of the North because the Boltons betrayed Cersei by marrying Sansa. But that was all set up by Baelish. So, do his ambitions stop by becoming the Warden of the North? Is he going to lead the Knights of Arryn to Winterfell, retake Winterfell, and become Warden of the North? But if so, what does that mean for Jon and Sansa? Plus, before he can get to Winterfell, he would need to get the army of Arryn through the twins, held by the Freys. And obviously from what they did in the Red Wedding, there's a lot of payback to be had there. So will he take out the Freys on the way up? Or will he just go through, take Winterfell, and then deal with them? But there's some revenge coming for the Freys somewhere down the line. But as it stands, obviously, he is the power in the Vale at the moment. Robin Arryn, although he's in charge of House Arryn now. He's the heir to House Arryn. He's the Lord of House Arryn. He is being played by Peter Baelish, his uncle. So it's very interesting, and you never write Baelish out of anything. You know, he's always there. He's always got an out. He's always got a plan. I think, personally, he's got his eyes on the throne. The Warden of the North is just a step towards the throne. I think he honestly does care about Sansa like he cared about Sansa's mum, Catelyn. Does he love her in the same way? I don't know. Possibly. Perhaps one of his plans is to marry Sansa at some point, and so solidify the North, and then use the North to take the South. Who knows what his long-term plans are? But that's going to be interesting as well. This whole thing is going to be interesting, this whole game. But then we move to Meereen. Tyrion, Varys, Missandei, Grey Worm. This time we have them, or at least Tyrion, in talks with his enemies from Slaver Bay. I mean, this is interesting. Astapor and Yunque have been retaken by the slave masters, and they are supposedly funding the Sons of the Harpy. Okay, now Tyrion, being the diplomat that he is, and let's face it, Tyrion has been brought up with the political games, backstabbing, betrayals, manoeuvring of Westeros. He has learned from the best. Tywin Lannister was one of the power brokers in Westeros before Tyrion killed him. He has learned from him. He has been in that world all of his life, and he is a smart, intelligent guy, and has got the gift of the gab. So he can talk his way into and out of a lot of problems, and I think Missandei and Grey Worm weren't giving him enough due for what he was doing. He was, to my mind at least, he is playing the slave masters of Astapor and Yunque. He knows he has to stop them funding the Sons of the Harpy. He has to solidify Meereen. He has to get that city on side. To do that, he has to cut off the funding. So, what better way to do that? Make peace with your enemies. So he invites them to have a chat, and he tells them, you know, I'm going to give you 7 years to stop slavery in your cities, and you will be recompensed for all the losses of not having slavery as your main income anymore. And then he leaves them to think it over. And, you know, Missandei and Grey Worm are like, well, you can't do that. 7 years for a slave is an amazingly long time. You know, you can't give them 7 years. But I don't think they realise. I don't think Tyrion ever intends to give them 7 years. If those guys had walked into that chamber and Tyrion had said, give up slavery right now, they would have just turned around and walked out. If he had said, give up slavery in the next couple of years, they would have turned around and walked out. What he has done has used a very big carrot on the end of the stick. He said 7 years. They're probably sitting there thinking, in 7 years anything can happen. We could take Meereen ourselves in 7 years. You might not be around in 7 years. Anything can happen in 7 years. So Tyrion has given them that time to placate them, to get them on side. So they stop funding the Sons of the Harpy. Tyrion and Grey Worm with the Unsullied can wipe the Sons of the Harpy out. That solidifies Meereen as a base. Once that's done, Tyrion can turn his eyes to Astapor and Yunque. And by that time, he's probably hoping Daenerys will be back with her dragons. But even if she isn't, he will still have a base of operations to move from. Meereen will be solidified, and he'll be strong. He'll have the Unsullied on side, and he can probably think up some way of taking out Astapor and Yunque. So I really don't think he's getting enough praise for what he has done. He's a smart man, and he's got these guys right where he wants them. Everybody else just needs to cut him a little bit of slack so his plan comes to fruition. But that was a good scene, so that's good. We like that. And then we head to King's Landing, and the Lannisters, and the Tyrells, and the constant infighting here. Marjorie and the High Sparrow have their little chat. What do we think of the High Sparrow? There's been a lot of talk, is he a devious SOB? Is he just playing the game? Or is he actually believing what he is telling everyone? I think Marjorie might have caught him a little bit in a lie in this one, where she realised that what he was telling her during their talk was straight out of one of the books, one of the religious texts. And he was a bit surprised that she obviously knew it, so he had to change his story at the end. So is he a wheeler dealer? Could be. He's in a position of power now, certainly, with the Faith Militant. So he's got some power behind him. But the thing is with the Faith Militant, really, they're just normal guys. They're not soldiers. They're just beggars with swords. So put them up against a trained army and they'll just be cut down. So what is he trying to do? I think he's trying to juggle it. I think he realises, oh yeah, okay, I've got a bit of a power base here, but I can't force my hand. I've got to try and juggle this so that I can stay in a position of power, perhaps grow, but not to the point where it all collapses in on me, where these powerful enemies decide they've had enough and attack me. But that looks like that's exactly what's going to happen. You've got Cersei and Jaime basically saying to Kevin Lannister and Lady Tyrell, we have a plan here. The Tyrell army, one of the biggest in Westeros, can come into King's Landing, attack the High Sparrow, save Marjorie, and the Lannister army will stand down. Kevin Lannister won't do anything to stop that, so he can't be blamed about what happens. But the thing is, Cersei and Jaime are smart cookies, and Jaime's already said to Cersei, we're going to take back everything that's been taken from us, and more. They're going after all of their enemies, and the Tyrells are almost number one on their list, especially for Cersei, because she hates Marjorie. So why would they invite one of their biggest enemies' armies into King's Landing? Well, the odds of them beating the Tyrells in the open field in combat are probably pretty slim. The Lannister army has already been through the wars. It's probably diminished. The Gold Cloaks, which are the King's army in King's Landing, were never very big. They're really just basically a city militia. And the King's Guard is made up of 7 men. They're basically the Secret Service of King's Landing and protect the king and his family. So Tommen, Cersei and Jaime don't have a huge force really at their disposal, and if they try to use the Lannister army they would have to go through Kevin Lannister, and he's not one of their biggest supporters obviously. So what to do? You could get, and here's just a theory, but if they invite the Tyrell army into King's Landing, it can't work as efficiently as it would out in an open field. We're talking about street fighting here, where numbers don't always work. If you've got a trained army yourself and it's an ambush, you could do some serious damage to the Tyrell army while it's inside King's Landing. And I don't think Cersei and Jaime really care too much about the innocent people who'd be killed in the bloodshed. So that's a possibility. Trap the Tyrell army inside King's Landing, kill them all, kill as many as you want, perhaps take out Lady Tyrell and Mace Tyrell while it's all going down. Possibly not. You could have it. I'm sure Cersei's found a way around this. Perhaps she's going to blame the Faith Militant. Perhaps Marjorie is killed by one of Cersei or Jaime's men and then they blame it on the Tyrells or they blame it on the Faith Militant. But Cersei doesn't want Marjorie back with Tommen because Marjorie is a competition for Tommen's soul and favour. So that's an interesting thing. I mean, also, you've got to take into account Cersei is playing from a position of weakness. Basically, the small council walked out on her and Jaime in the last episode, and she can feel that. She knows she doesn't really have a lot of power. Tommen is a bit all over the place. She doesn't know whether she can depend on him. The small council aren't listening to her and Jaime. What do you do? Well, you've got Mace Tyrell and Lady Tyrell both on the small council. And these are your biggest enemy, but they're also one of the biggest and most powerful houses in Westeros. Okay, you don't like them, but you haven't got any power yourself. So for right now, why not team up with them, get rid of the Faith Militant, another one of your enemies, and then deal with the Tyrells later. That would work. It's as good a reason as any. And then we see Margaery talking with her brother, Loras, the Knight of Flowers, one of the most renowned knights in Westeros. Not looking too bright right now, but Cersei's trial is coming up. So assuming the trial happens before the Tyrell army enters King's Landing, Cersei wanted a trial by combat, and she was obviously going to use the Mountain as her champion. Who would the High Sparrow put up in his defence? He doesn't really have a fighter on side, certainly no one who could take down the Mountain in any shape or form. But there is Loras Tyrell, the Knight of Flowers, in his dungeon, and Loras wants to get out of there, and I think he's in a position to make a deal. Now, assuming he's not too physically weakened, what about if the High Sparrow goes to him and says, look, I need a champion, I'll make a deal with you. You be our champion, and that will show your faith and your repentance to everything you've done, and you win, you're a free man. That might work. If this trial by combat goes ahead, of course. But if it doesn't, I don't know who else the High Sparrow can put up in his defence. A lot of people saying, oh, the Hound. Yeah, but why would the Hound fight for the High Militant, for the High Sparrow, the Faith Militant? That doesn't make any sense. He's not a religious guy. And he was left in a pretty bad position anyway by Arya. So perhaps he hasn't even regained his full strength yet. And even if he did, he's a smart cookie. He's not going to want to go up against the Mountain unless there's something big in it for him. So I don't know. That's going to be an interesting one to see out. Like I say, it all depends on whether the Tyrell army arrives at King's Landing before the trial, but we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. And then Theon is home in the Iron Islands and meets up with his sister Yara, who's obviously not entirely pleased to see him. No warm homecoming for him. She accuses him of coming home to get the crown as the heir to Balon Greyjoy. And he informs her, well, first of all, he didn't know that his dad was dead until he got there. And secondly, he didn't know the King's Moot had been called. But let's face it, the captains of the Iron Islands aren't going to side with Theon. For one, he's had his manhood cut off, and they probably all know about that. So that's probably going to weaken him in their eyes as it stands. So throwing his support, what there is of it, behind his sister Yara is a smart move. Now, in the books, this doesn't happen. Theon is still with Ramsay Bolton while the King's Moot is going ahead, and Yara tries to gain support on her own and doesn't succeed. Euron Greyjoy becomes king. So what's going to happen in the TV show, I don't know. I think Euron will still become king in the show. I think he'll have the support. I don't think the problem for Yara is being a girl. Although it's not explicitly against the rules for her to become queen, or ruler of the Iron Islands, as she's a female, it's not something the guys are really going to side with. So I think Euron's going to win the King's Moot. And if he does, another theory, if he does, he's not going to want Yara hanging around, because she's going to be a thorn in his side. The Iron Islands are basically the Vikings of Game of Thrones universe. So what if Euron, who himself is a pirate, a reaver, what if he says to her, here's some ships, go to Essos and raid the coastline for me. Get her away, get her out of there, get her miles and miles away so he can deal and rule the Iron Islands as he wants to see it done. So she does that. She takes her ships, heads to Essos. Who do we know in Essos who needs a load of ships? Whose ships have just been burnt in the harbour by the Sons of the Harpy? Oh yeah, Tyrion and Daenerys. They need some ships. How about if Yara and Daenerys meet up? What about if Yara becomes Daenerys' admiral? she sides with Daenerys, brings all of her ships over to Daenerys' side. There's a cool idea. And if Daenerys does leave Essos and decide to invade Westeros and go for the Iron Throne, perhaps she'll leave Missandei and Grey Worm behind in control while she takes Tyrion, Yara, Daario Naharis and his second son soldiers, along with the Unsullied, and attacks Westeros. I mean, she also has, of course, right now, hundreds of thousands of cavalry. She's wiped out the entire Dothraki leadership in one fell swoop. All the Khals are dead. Now, Khal Drogo had 40,000 warriors on his own. She has taken out, what, a dozen Khals? Half a dozen Khals? However many were in that hut, there were quite a few. Now let's assume that each one of them had around 40,000. We're talking of hundreds of thousands of horse riders here that she now has control of. She is in command of. Gives her lots of options. She could take out, or try to take out, the slaver-based cities, Yunkai and Astapor. The only problem with that is cavalry doesn't do well when it comes to taking walled cities. You need infantry for that. And the Unsullied are obviously keeping Marine in check. So that might not be what she does. But she can certainly use them in the wars if she takes them over to Westeros. So that'll be cool. But she has to get there. How do you get hundreds of thousands of horses across the narrow sea to Westeros? That's a lot of ships. I mean, horses are not small animals. You've got to get them, the riders, the supplies. Yeah, that's not going to happen. But let's face it, she doesn't need all of the Dothraki with her. She only probably needs about a third of them. So that makes it slightly more possible. What will the dragons do? What will she do with the dragons? They haven't been seen since Tyrion released or unchained those two in the dungeons. Now, did he release them into the wide world? We don't know. I mean, I'm assuming that he did, but if so, where have they gone? If he didn't, then they're still moping around in that dungeon, so his speech about, oh, dragons have to be free or they'll just have stunted growth, that doesn't really, okay, you've unchained them, but they're still in a dungeon, so that's not going to help them grow. So we'll have to see where that plays out, but that's going to be great. But what we did get some great scenes between Jorah and Daario Naharis as they were sneaking into Vaes Dothrak to save Daenerys, who obviously didn't need saving in the end. And that poor Jorah, I mean, the poor guy, you talk about, he's stuck in the friend zone when it comes to Daenerys. He's suffering from that stone scale infliction that he's got on his arm, so that's going to probably end up killing him or turning him into some sort of creature. And he's obviously feeling it. I mean, he goes up against that Dothraki in that alleyway and he's just getting the shit kicked out of him. And then when he tries to throw sand in the guy's eyes, he just misses totally. It's really funny, but the look on the poor guy's face, it's like nothing is working for me. What the? And it takes Daario to turn up and stab the guy in the back, but that was funny. And then obviously Daenerys ends the problem by killing all the Khals and walking out of another blazing pyre building naked and fireproof. Well, the problem is, it's not a problem, but in the books, she survives the pyre of Khal Drogo, where the dragons are hatched. Now, George R. Martin has said that there's some blood magic involved there. Because I believe on the pyre, if I remember correctly, that on the pyre of Khal Drogo, the witch who killed Daenerys' unborn son was tied to a stake in the pyre. So she was burning to death while that was going on. So George R. Martin is saying that there's some blood magic involved and that was why Daenerys survived that. That was a one-off thing. The Targaryens have, in the books at least, aren't fireproof. Many of them have died in fires before. So it's not a bloodline thing. Just being a Targaryen doesn't mean that you're fireproof, that fire can't hurt you. I mean, look at Daenerys' brother. If he was a Targaryen, pure-blooded Targaryen, yet he died with that golden crown of his that Khal Drogo poured in his head, that shouldn't have killed him if we're saying the Targaryens are fireproof. So it's a question of, have the TV writers decided, because we're going off book in this season, we can do whatever we want, and because she was fireproof all those seasons ago at Khal Drogo's pyre, we'll just make her fireproof here, and she can kill off all these guys in this big fire and just walk out of the building and everyone will bow before her. Well, obviously that's exactly what they did. But will they explain it? Probably not. They'll probably just assume that everyone who isn't a book reader will be fine with it. And it was a very amazing scene, very powerful scene. It's going to be interesting to see what happens next. We probably won't see Daenerys in the next episode, or if we do, it's going to be rather fleeting. They have other storylines they need to get back to. I think we see Bran meeting up with the White Walkers next episode. Whether that's a flashback, I'm assuming it's a flashback. Will Arya come in again? We'll probably see the King's Moot maybe in the next episode. So there are a lot of other storylines they need to get onto, so probably Tyrion and Daenerys won't be that big a deal in the next episode. So that's about it for this episode. As I say, an amazing show. We see Daenerys in all her glory again. We get to see the reunion of Jon Snow and Sansa Stark. So fantastic episode. And I can't wait to see. We're 4 episodes into a 10-episode arc. It's going so fast. But it looks like they've picked up the storytelling rate, which is good, because that's what we need to see. So I'll see you guys next time for the next episode, episode 5. And let's see where this one takes us. You guys take care. And if you're interested, or if you enjoyed this recap review, please, if you could, just subscribe to my channel over here, my YouTube channel, and there'll be more movie reviews and TV show reviews on there. You guys take care. See you later.